Welcome to another edition of College Basketball Net Profit, Pub Sports Radio. Ian Cameron, Conor Mack, Thursday, November 10th, ready for another college basketball slate. It has been a red-hot start to the year for yours truly. 47-21. I mean, it's just been incredible these first 3 days. And look, there's some edges. There's some opportunities that are out there. Teams mispriced, totals that are mispriced, coaching changes, personnel changes, scheme and tempo changes, team that played slow before playing fast and vice versa. A lot of things you could take advantage of these first few days before odds makers catch up, and we're certainly doing that, and hopefully we can point you in the right direction on this Thursday. Conor Mack, what's up? How's the season treating you through 3 days?
It's fine. I'm taking it slow. As we're on here, I was on here, week Monday through Friday last year. I'll tell you what, on this show, we bet, and I would have stuck with those bets yesterday that went 0-2. I got 6, even though it was 4 in that game with Florida Gulf Coast. I think it was a 1-point game with 2:38 left or whatever. They fouled a guy. He made both free throws with 0.2 seconds left. So I would take that. That's why I gave it out even at 4. And I still would have took that over with the Jackrabbits. Obviously, they came to play and covered it. But I come on here every day, and I would never not tell you what happened the day before.
Yep.
I'll tell you, last year I went over. Max did the same when he would be on. I'm sure you would do the same. Yep. So you have a ton of bets sometimes, but I know you would still go through them. So I just got to get that out of the way because I always did that last year. Yeah. I mean, I have no problem doing that. It's like we're on video here. I'm showing my face. I mean, good, bad, the ugly. We're trying to give you good looks, and I think all of our leans yesterday were spot on. I just didn't bet all those games. So I thought all around it was good. Day one was very good for me, Monday. I didn't even make a bet on Tuesday, but I got some today. So I'm ready to rock, my guy. I just want to get that out of the way.
We are ready to rock indeed with the Thursday edition of the show. So the format's going to be, we're going to touch on like a handful of marquee games early in the show. And then anything that I like that we did not discuss in the marquee game segment, I'll talk about it. And anything that Conor likes, that we didn't talk about in the marquee game segment, we will. So let's start with the best of the best, if you will, the most glamorous matchups. We'll start with Western Carolina taking on Maryland here. We've got the Terrapins, 20-point home favorites, 144 being the total in this game. Of course, Kevin Willard now, the head coach of the Maryland Terrapins, taken over. Of course, Mark Turgeon got fired midseason last year. He comes over after a great run at Seton Hall with the Pirates. Maryland here, a team that's kind of in some transition here. Western Carolina, we know they're a team that's pushed the pace, pushed the tempo, has a pretty good offensive team the last couple of years. We'll see if they can make that offense happen here on the road against Maryland. They're coming off a 68-55 loss in their season opener to Georgia a few nights ago. But they did cover the numbers, 13.5-point underdogs. Maryland with a 71-49 romp over Niagara in their first game. Niagara team a little shorthanded, though, going into that game. I kind of leaned to Western Carolina a little bit here. A few too many points, in my opinion. I thought this number should have been maybe closer to 17, 18. Once it got up to as high as 21.5, I'm like, I think that's a few too many points. And the betting markets seem to agree because this has been bet down a bit, down to 20. I'd look at the underdog here a little bit. The total's been bet up. Maryland played a real slog, slow-paced game against Niagara, but Greg Paulus, the former Dookie who coaches Niagara, that's a very, very methodical team. They've consistently been in the 300s in tempo ratings, tempo rankings in the country. So I think we get back to more of an up and down pace here, and I think the betting markets agree because this total's been bet up, and I agree with it, up to 144. Conor Mack, any thoughts here? Western Carolina, Maryland.
Yeah, I'm shocked by this total move a little bit. I'm just shocked it's moved this much now and touched 144. Because are we going to get there? I'm not so sure. I think Western Carolina is going to shoot it better than they did. And you mentioned the Niagara game. They couldn't make anything. Very slow. Maryland took care of business. I thought the line, just like you did, was too big. This one has me circled right here. I might make a move on it. I thought it was more like 16 or 17 in this one. So I think the 20 points with Western Carolina is solid here.
Definitely. It seems like I said, a few too many points. I kind of like the dog here. Towson and UMass. We've got UMass 3.5-point home favorites. 146 this total. This total has actually been bet down a little bit. And it's fascinating to see how this goes. We know Towson over the years, Pat Scarry, the head coach. You know what's been scary for opponents? The defense for Towson. They've been a pretty good defensive team the last couple of years. And it's a great, good old-fashioned clash of styles and pace here that we're going to see in this game. Towson's going to want to slow it down. Towson's going to want to play in the half court. Towson's got a pretty solid defense as well. But UMass, they've played fast for years, and most of it was under Kellogg and all these different coaches they've had. Well, now they bring in Frank Martin, former South Carolina head coach, former Kansas State head coach, of course, years ago. He now is the head coach of UMass. And if you noticed with Martin, Kansas State, they didn't exactly play lightning fast, but down the last couple seasons with South Carolina, they did play fast in terms of tempo, and you're probably going to see more of the same here with UMass. So you got a team that's going to want to get out and run in transition against a team that's going to want to really grind it and down into a half-court game. So it's a good clash of styles. What I will say, Connor, is Towson is a team I thought was going to be pretty good coming into the year, but then you start to see in the scrimmage games, the preseason games, they look pretty bad. You know, they didn't look great in a couple of those games. Their first game of the season against Albany, who was decimated by suspensions. They had 5 players out due to suspension, and Towson was just very, very
Barely
poor
beat
against them. Yeah, barely escaped with the victory in that game. So I've got some worries here about Towson. I also had UMass as a bit of a bet-on team as well, but after what I've seen from Towson here, the Albany game, mediocre results in the scrimmage, and UMass, I think they destroyed a team that they should have in their opener, 94-67 victory for them in their first game of the season. But I think when you look at this here, I think UMass just early in the season might be in a little bit better shape right now than Towson. So the money's come in. I laid $1.20 on the money line with UMass. That was this morning. And I hate to be a broken record, but again, the line is moving in the direction of what I liked. 3.5 now with UMass, but I agree with the move. I think UMass gets the victory. What do you think here, Connor?
I think so too. It's just a little puzzling. It's going to take time. The whole thing with Towson, like you mentioned, they were very good last year, 25-9. 15-3 in conference. And you mentioned sluggish. The Albany team with those guys out and still won by 5. And it's still early. This is one. I think UMass is the lean. This has moved a little bit too much. I still think they can win this game. I think with this total, I think it gets in the 70s. It could get over, but I'm going to stay off in the end. I lean UMass, but it's getting away from me here.
Yeah, it's one of those seasons. I want to say something too about the line moves. You're going to say, well, wait a minute. The line's moved 3 or 4 points. I can't bet it now. You should be more open-minded to betting a bad number in November than, say, January, February. Like if it's like a 3 or 4 point line move in January, February, March, you'd better not be betting a move that much, getting the worst of the number. In November, there's a little bit more wiggle room because in a lot of these instances, the lines are off a lot more this early in the season, and there's a lot more guesswork, I find, from odds makers.
Yeah, I agree. And it still always depends on the game. Like to me, I'd still lay it here. Free whatever bet, I'd lay it with UMass to 3.5.
But when those lines get tighter come conference play in January and you're betting 4 points the worst of the number, you don't want to be doing that regularly. That's for sure. You can get away with it a little bit more. I guess that's what I'm saying early in the season. All right. There we go. That is Towson and UMass. Next up, we've got Central Michigan taking on Marquette. It is the Golden Eagles, 18-point home favorites in this game. We've got 153.5 being the total in this game. Of course, with Marquette, you pretty much know what you're going to get. Shaka Smart here once again with the Golden Eagles. They had a 79-69 win in their opener. Did not cover, though. 19-point favorites in that game. It was a decent enough outing. I think defensively, Marquette's going to improve. That was an issue with Marquette last year, is that I don't think that team defensively was as good as I think Shaka wanted them to be. But it looks like there should be improved at that end of the court this year. Central Michigan, meanwhile, they're playing their first game. They have not played yet, Central Michigan. So you got a team with a game under their belt, Central Michigan has. Central Michigan obviously did not have a good season last year. at all. It was ugly for them. They were a team that, especially early in their defense got a little bit better late in the year, but it was still a team that was just piss poor at the defensive end of the basketball court. We'll have to see if that improves a little bit. This is another one where I understand why the total went up. You should see Central Michigan certainly is an over team, but now 153, 153 and a half. You have to be a little bit concerned it's moved too much. We are talking 7-point move here. I think there is there's a reason it moved. I kind of agree with it, but it's just now 153 and a half is pretty high. And Marquette does seem to be improved defensively this year. And if that is indeed something that carries over to this game tonight, it could be a little bit trickier to get this game over the total. I also want to point out, Conor Mack, that with totals early in the season here in college basketball, we have really seen a lot of overs early in the season. I just want to bring out the exact numbers here. I think I can find. Yeah, here we go. So far this season, college basketball with overs, we've got looks like 74 and 68. So that's actually not as big a discrepancy as I thought, but still 74 and 68 in terms of overs compared to unders. So that's something to keep in mind. It looks like more fouls are being called. Defense is maybe a little step behind early in the season, so something to keep in mind. What do you like here, C-Mac?
Yeah, that might be true. In the end, I think it'll shake out. Look at the NBA, like the first week or so, there was all those overs. They start getting into a groove a little bit.
Yep.
Not tons, depends on the team. The NBA plays defense, but same. Some teams here in college. Central Michigan, I mean, they bring back Kevin Miller, was pretty good. I think he averaged 13 or 14 last year, but there's a bunch of turnover with Central Michigan. This is just kind of that middle number. I think Marquette wins this game. It's just, do you want to lay it? I think it might be too many, but it's kind of asking a bunch from Central to cover. So I had nothing on this one. You mentioned this total is high. I think there's points, and I kind of lean over. But, start getting almost in the mid 150s. Better get there. Both sides better score. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Miller's a good player for Central, but after that, there's a drop off. And again, they're gonna have to improve defensively. I mean, there's a big reason why they only won 7 games last year is because of just not being able to get stops at the defensive end of the basketball court. That's definitely going to have to improve itself here tonight against Marquette and moving forward. Next up, Cleveland State and Cincinnati. The Bearcats here, 22 and a half point home favorites. The total in this game sitting at around 138, 138 and a half, pretty much across the board. This is a team that I think could be pretty solid this year, the Bearcats. No question about that. Wes Miller, I like him as a head coach, did great job before getting this job, of course, coached down in Greensboro before that. So good hire it was, especially when you look at the fact that the previous coach, Brandon, it just didn't go well for him there in Cincinnati. I think he's brought a little bit more of a defensive presence as well to the Bearcats, which is good. They get that toughness again. We got that Cincinnati, type of playback with, I think, a better flair of offense, to be quite honest with you, this season. There really is potential for the Cincinnati Bearcats to be a solid offensive team. We remember in the Mick Cronin era how this team was not very aesthetically pleasing offensively, but excellent defensively, tough, rebound the basketball, physical team. Well, this year they're expected to be, a top 50, 60 offensive team. So they are going to be able, I think, to put the biscuit in the basket to go with what we think should be a above average to very, very good defensive team. So I actually think this could get away from Cleveland State. You look at the Vikings, they had a really good head coach in Dennis Gates, but he ended up departing in the offseason, and now you bring in Danielle Robinson here, the new head coach for the Vikings. A little bit of a work in progress this could be for Cleveland State. That's, I think you lose a coach of that quality, it could be a little bit of an adjustment period here. There's been some roster turnover as well that's concerning for me for Cleveland State entering this season. I think this is, to me, at least on paper, sets up to be a pretty tough ask against Cincinnati. If you get Cincinnati's A game, they're making shots, and I think their guard play has the chance to be a lot better this year, to go with that defense, to go with that rebounding here. I think this could end up being difficult assignment tonight for Cleveland State in this matchup. So I actually went ahead and laid 22 with Cincinnati in this game. I laid the big number here with the Bearcats. What do you think here, Conor Mack?
I got to give a shout out to the chat, as I always say. Best goddamn chat in the goddamn game, hands down. AOD, G Martinez, Rez Mob, good to see you, my man. T Mac, always here. P, good to see you up in here. Andrew G, yeah, he says don't bet Milwaukee. James Madison, James S. Damn, we got college basketball on the mind. Indiana Creek, what's up?
James Madison's
Matty
going to be
Ice,
able to score the basketball this year if we've seen
they
anything
blew it
from the
out.
first two
I mean,
games. Yeah.
I should have laid it. I liked it, but holy shit last night.
Wow.
Chester Cat, good to see you. You would have told me this, last few years, I'd be like, come on. I'd take Cleveland State in the points here, but I don't know what to make of them so early. You talked about some of the change they had, losing Notre Dame College. I mean,
Not
not very good.
No.
Yeah, not good.
No.
Cincinnati, though, I think will be pretty good. And you mentioned the numbers got away a little bit. Matty Ice just put it in there. But I still think they might get the cover here. Them laying this number the last few years, unless they're very good defense the last 5 years or so, even with Cronin out, they haven't covered these numbers. That's just a fact. If you've laid it with Cincy, they haven't got it done, but maybe they do here. In the end, I'm going to stay off.
All right. Next up, continuing to serve the suspension, of course, Bill Self, but his Kansas Jayhawks in action, hosting the North Dakota State. We've got Kansas, 24-point home favorites, 146.5 being the total in this game. They got an 89-64 victory in their season opener against Nebraska Omaha on Monday night. We'll see if they can carry that over here. North Dakota State faced a tough assignment in their opener against Arkansas. They were very competitive for the first half. They were only down by 8. Then things started to get away from them. That's what Arkansas does. They just run you ragged for 40 minutes, with that frantic full court, pressure style that they play. And that's when they just wear you down. And that's exactly what they did to North Dakota State, obviously, earlier this week. I was still remarkable. It was decent enough effort from North Dakota State, though, in that game. They did cover as 22.5 point underdogs in this game. And it seems like with Kansas, remember, they were 33.5 point favorites against Nebraska Omaha, and they didn't cover that game. So, asking Kansas to lay this many points early on in the non-conference. And I remember there were some spots I was picking against Kansas early last year in non-conference play. And, this is the kind of team that, they expect themselves to be in the national championship hunt come March. Are they pushing themselves to the full extent of their ability, to just absolutely whip on teams this early in the season? Not really. And when you look at North Dakota State, I think they've got some. This is a little bit of a funky setup here too, because of the way they operate offensively. It could be something that Kansas, has some time to adjust to here, or may not be able to adjust to, I should say, immediately. I think you can make a case for North Dakota State here for a small bet. I kind of lean to the underdog here, getting the 24 in this one. What do you think, Conor Mack, with NDSU and Kansas?
Yeah, it's a ton of points. Early on, some of these big games, unless I really love laying the points, like I don't want to get involved in these games. You talked about they were all right, North Dakota State versus Kansas. Will they be able to score? And on the flip side, then, if Kansas can't cover this number, can they get 85? That's the team total. I mean, I think it'll be close. So if you like that a little bit better than laying the 24, but I think if they get to 80 over 85, they probably cover that. It's just early on. You talked about. I mean, Self's gone. I don't know how much that matters in a game like this. So yeah, it's one I'm not going to play in the total. I'm not going to mess with it either. It seems a bit high. I'm going to stay off.
Yeah. And plus, by the way, Duke is on deck coming up for Kansas next week, November 15th. They got the big, I think they call that the Champions Classic or something like that against Duke next week. So that is something to keep in mind. Means that, that's why it's from a spot perspective, could be a little dubious here to lay 24 in this situation with the Jayhawks. Next up, we've got, as we continue along, Southern Illinois and Oklahoma State. We've got the Cowboys here, 8.5 point home favorites, 133.5 being the total in this game. This is a pretty good non-conference matchup, to be quite honest with you. It'll be fascinating to see how this goes. Southern Illinois, they just destroyed Arkansas Little Rock in their first game. Huge performance from them. Xavier Johnson, really good point guard, leading the SIU team. That's going to be interesting to see. Oklahoma State defensively pretty good. So that's going to be something I want to watch for. And sometimes they're good at forcing turnovers, but I think this point guard, Johnson here for SIU, can value the basketball and not play into the strength of that Oklahoma State defense when you see how it goes. It's always the concern for Southern Illinois throughout the last year or so, especially in Missouri Valley play as well last year. Defensively, it comes and goes for them. So can they be able to get key stops in this game against this Oklahoma State team? That remains to be seen. And can they score enough and at least not turn the basketball over, which Oklahoma State thrives on going into this matchup here. But you look at Oklahoma State coming into this season, they're a team that I think in a very deep Big 12. I mean, the Big 12 conference in college basketball this year, it's got so many very good teams, but I think a kind of a lethargic opening game of the year, if you ask me, from Oklahoma State. 77 to 66 was the victory for them against UT Arlington. It wasn't overly dominant. Their offense was pretty solid, 26 to 60. Defense wasn't that bad, but again, never pulled away, never got a margin in that game over UT Arlington. So, and the one thing I like too about Southern Illinois, the rebounding was good in the first game. They've got a little bit of depth. I think there's a pathway for Southern Illinois to keep this one really competitive here against Oklahoma State. I do have a look towards Southern Illinois here, getting the 8.5 and in this game, especially when you saw how Oklahoma State, for a large part of that, and keep in mind, UT Arlington ain't the UT Arlington team of a few years ago when they were a top tier team. They fell apart last year. It's not like that was a phenomenal opponent that they played, Oklahoma State. So I think Southern Illinois can hang in this game, getting 8.5. Any thoughts here, Conor? Salukis, Cowboys.
Yeah, we'll see if they can. Southern Illinois for the last few years has really been one of the shit teams for me that haven't got covers, and I've always liked them. They've been a decent under team for me. They scored a ton of points in that opening game against Little Rock. They're not known. They were hot shooting it everywhere. Obviously, Oklahoma State a little bit better defensively. I don't think they shoot it that well. And Oklahoma State, kind of like last year, didn't shoot it well in the opener, even though they won handily. I think they were like 5 of, I don't know what it was from 3. It wasn't very good. I had it written down. I wanted over 10 to really be on Southern Illinois. I kind of like them lukewarm here at 8.5. And this total, I like the under. It's come down, 3 or 4 points. So it's getting dicey here at 133, but I lean that way. 6 of 25 from 3 for the Cowboys.
All right, we got 2 more games left on the marquee games. Then I'll give some games that I like that we didn't talk about. Conor, the same. He'll give some games that he likes that we didn't talk about already, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A, some questions from the chat. Our great producer Jose does a good job here, and it really helps what he's doing. He's putting a little star beside the comments, asking a question about a specific game so that I know which ones to look for. So that will help when we get to Q&A. So if you have a question on a specific game that we haven't gotten to by the time we get to that part of the show, feel free to ask it, and we'll try to give you at least a lean in terms of the side and the total. All right, let's go to a battle, in-state battle. Western Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, Hilltoppers and Colonels. Next up here, we've got Western Kentucky 7.5-point road favorites, and this total's been steamed up all the way to a 157 here in this game from an opener of 152.5. I fully agree with it. It should be a ton of points. It should be a great amount of pace on both sides in this game. Eastern Kentucky has always been a top, I would say, 25 pace team, tempo team the last few years. They're already 20th this year. A pretty solid offensive team, too. The backcourt's pretty solid for the Colonels coming into this year. I kind of lean to the Eastern Kentucky side as well, plus 7.5 in this game a little bit. But I much prefer the total in this game. I think it's going to end up going up and over that number in this one. Western Kentucky, a very solid team for years, no doubt. They just haven't been able to get over the hump, Western Kentucky. They've always been right there to win their conference, finally punch that elusive bid to the NCAA tournament, and then they just fall short. But they once again bring back a pretty good basketball team this year. It actually could be, honestly, one of the better offensive additions of the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers in recent memory. Last year, at times, the offense hit or miss, although there was still more hit than miss. And once again, I think definitely they're going to be able to score points this year. And the one thing about Eastern Kentucky is last year, 2 years ago, and probably this year as well, they're going to give up points, should get good pace, should get good offensive ability, both sides, matchup advantages for both sides at that end of the floor. So I fully agree with this total. This is actually one line move where I could actually still see this game getting over the total, even with the move, 152 to 158. I think the 160s is possible, especially with the way Eastern Kentucky's playing. The coach for Eastern Kentucky even said, I'm trying to play even faster this year than they have in years. And they were already a pretty fast-paced team. They're trying to play even faster than that this year. So, yeah, we should see a lot of possessions and a lot of offensive execution here, both sides. So I like the over. And I still think you can bet it at 158, the current number. That's actually, it's 157. So I still like it at that number. I think you could still get over that the number with these two teams. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, I mean, the initial move, I like this over, but this has moved a ton. I mean, it still might get there, like you mentioned. I'll just watch it. No need for me to bet it. There should be a ton of pace in this one. You mentioned Western Kentucky always just can't get there in the end. We're solid last year, 11-7 in conference, 19-13 during the year. Eastern, okay as well. You talked about their fast pace. We should see a ton of points. I kind of like Eastern with the points in this one. This one was just a strong lean for me. I just see a back and forth game, so I lean the 7.5.
All right, last of our marquee games, and then we'll get into games that Conor likes, and then me as well. We'll wrap it up with St. Mary's and Vermont. St. Mary's hosting Vermont. St. Mary's 8-point home favorites, 131 the total here in this one. Depending on the number you got on Monday night with Oral Roberts, you probably should have cashed with Oral Roberts because they lost by 8, 78-70 to St. Mary's. I think, Conor, you were on Oral Roberts as well. I know I was. In that game, plus the points, and they just snuck out the cover. I kind of feel this is going to be something similar, that I think St. Mary's is probably going to win straight up, but anytime I'm seeing this very well-coached Vermont team, they're very efficient offensively. They move the ball well. They don't usually do too much to beat themselves. It's hard to gain a margin of victory against a team like the Vermont Catamounts. Now, there is some scuttlebutt, if you will, that this Vermont team is not nearly as good, or not nearly the shoe-in to maybe win the America East Conference that they normally are. But that being said, we know they're very disciplined at the offensive end of the court. What they'll basically do is they'll give up a good shot to get a great shot. That's been the Vermont team that we have seen all these years. And that's what you need against St. Mary's, who are a very good defensive team. So if you have that shot selection discipline, you can make some things happen against St. Mary's. It's not going to be easy against St. Mary's, but I think and the Vermont team usually plays pretty solid as well at the defensive end of the court. They like slowing it down, playing in the half court. We know St. Mary's will. That's why this total's in the 130s here, 131, because you're not going to get a ton of pace on either side. But I definitely lean to Vermont here. The Catamounts getting 8. What do you think here, Conor? Vermont, St. Mary's.
Yeah, this has moved a little bit. For St. Mary's, yeah, they eked out, a good win. Just got the cover, though, with Oral Roberts. I think both these teams are a little bit not as good, you mentioned. St. Mary's, though, still played well last year. When I don't know if you thought they were a little bit down on them, but we'll see what we get out of here. Another game at home, but I like Vermont. I want the 8.5. I disagree. I think they can hang around. Aaron Delaney needs to be very good. He scored 32 against Brown. But if he could get 15 to 20, dish it around and hit some big threes, I think Vermont's in this. And this is I like a few unders. Even at this number, I'd look under here. St. Mary's, I think they just were able to score on Oral Roberts. Obviously, that defense is not very good, and Oral Roberts was able to score a little bit to get that cover. So I think this one's tight. I think it's too many points. So I'm on the 8.5. I lean under.
All right, I would lean under too. I know it's a low number, but it's low for a reason. The one thing that I think Vermont might exploit here in this game is the one thing St. Mary's struggled with against Oral Roberts on Monday. 3-point defense wasn't great against Oral Roberts. They gave up 40% shooting to Oral Roberts in that first game, and Vermont does shoot the three at a pretty solid percentage, a solid clip, 43% from 3-point range for Vermont. And last year they were high 30s, approaching high 30s for the season in terms of their 3-point shooting. So that perimeter defense is they are very tough to score on inside. St. Mary's, but you can have some success from the perimeter as well. And Vermont might be able to exploit that a little bit. So that's another reason I think Vermont can hang around in this game. All right, so that's the marquee games. We're going to pass it to Conor Mack now. Conor, games that we haven't talked about yet that you like tonight on the card from a betting perspective. What do you like?
Yeah, I forget what if Jose had time to do it. Let's just get to this one. Yeah, Gardner-Webb, Stephen F. Austin. I thought this game was very interesting. I thought this was one of the better games, especially on the actual board, between two good small schools that are really, really good. I lean the points with Gardner-Webb. They played Colorado State tough the other day. And we already know Stephen F. Austin is very good. I thought they were very good defensively. They beat up on, I even know the name of this team. I mean, you give me help if you could look that up. Babano. So I think this is tight. Gardner-Webb can keep it close. But the one thing I think this game stays in the 60s. This line's moved because I just think they think these teams can score who they played. But I think this is clamped down here. I think this game's in the 60s. So this total's moved up to 139. I'm going to take the under. I liked it a few points down, and it's moving up. This is one on the board I disagreed with. So I like the under 139, and I'd lean those points there.
I agree. I was impressed with them. Absolutely. Gardner-Webb in that opener against Colorado State, 65-63. You mean you don't respect at all, or you're not giving any love to Stephen F. Austin for beating Laturno 93-40? Yeah,
Come
Laturno.
on.
Sounds like a school from France or something. Laturno here, 93-40 in their first game. So, yeah, I mean, obviously this is going to be a step up for Stephen F. Austin. So, yeah, liking the underdog. Not a game I bet, but I don't hate that look at all. All right, what else have you got?
Yeah, let's get to my second one here. This is one guy, shout out to our guy, Arthur Mead, who hit me up a question about on Twitter. It's Colgate Brown here. Colgate, tough loss to Buffalo, a 1-point game, 88-87. They should be able to score in this one. I've fought over this. This total's actually moved down a tiny bit, but I disagree. I think get over it. Will Brown score enough in this one? So it's tough. I think they cover because I looked at back and forth. This is one Colgate, their team total 77.5, which I think could get there. But even at 6.5, I think you can lay at 6, even depending on where you can get it. Open 5.5. I think Colgate takes care of business with Brown here. They just won't be able to score enough. Vermont beat them 80-65. That could be similar in this spot. So I like laying it with Colgate.
Yeah, I'm on this game too, but I'm on the total. I like it over the total here. Colgate and Brown.
I don't blame you. I'm shocked it's gone down.
Yeah,
I'm shocked.
I don't agree with that. Colgate's defense, by the way, Colgate's defense struggled against Buffalo, and it's more of the same with Colgate. And that's what you get with the Patriot League, and that's what you get with them specifically. They got shooters, they've got guys that are very, disciplined, they play the game smart, the right way, but they just lack athleticism compared to some teams. And you could tell in that Buffalo game, anytime Buffalo was running and the battle on the boards, Buffalo was winning those battles, not Colgate the other night. So they struggle again from an athleticism standpoint compared to some other teams. Matty Ice liking Brown here plus the points here. What can Brown do for you? Hopefully for Matty Ice, cover the point spread. We'll see if that is indeed the case. I like the over. Like I say, I'm a little surprised, a little perplexed that the totals dropped from 151.5 down to 148 in this game, especially when we know Matt Langille's Colgate team the last few years. They've been very efficient offensively. They've consistently been top 100, sometimes even top 50 offense, above average pace and tempo. And then on the Brown side of things, it's definitely a team that's had some issues defensively here in recent memory. And this year, I think offensively improved quite a bit. So I think 148, liking that total over. Yep.
I might join you on it and double up.
Surprised.
Brown just hasn't been good. Maybe this team's better. Maybe Matty Ice is right. 0-5 their last 5 games. 0-8 their last 8 at home to end the year. Yep. Unless they're different. I know Colgate, it's like in college football. I don't like laying points with a bad defense. Yep. I get it, but maybe I think Colgate can just outscore in here.
All right. And look, I know I don't send my games that I like specifically to Jose so he could put the graphics up, but that's okay because I have a shit ton of games. He'd be there working on the graphics forever. So
Yeah.
that's totally okay. I'm just going to run rapid fire through the rest of the games I like. I like
Okay.
Omaha plus the points against Nebraska in that in-state battle. I think
All
Omaha
right.
stays inside that number. I'm not ready to trust Nebraska here in this first game of the season, laying points in this opening matchup. Omaha, of course, at least I'll say this about Omaha. They played Kansas the first game. I can't say I'm really thrilled and impressed with the job that we've seen Fred Hoiberg do here with the Nebraska team. It's been a squad that's kind of been treading water. It really hasn't improved all that much. You always know that when you get little brother in state versus the bigger team, you get that team wanting to show something here. So, and I like the hire for Nebraska Omaha. It's a guy that should be bringing a little bit more defensive aptitude to this Omaha team. Omaha couldn't stop anything last year. It was a horrible defensive team, but this guy wants to slow down the pace, play better defense, play a little bit more in the half court. Maybe that can frustrate Nebraska, who of course want to get out and run. That's the way they want to play. So I like Omaha here a little bit, plus 17 and a half in that game. In that one. And I'll give you another underdog that I like, although I am seeing the line now move against me in this game. Arizona State, we just saw them lose to Tarleton State. Look very disjointed. They have a talented bunch, but how many years have we said that with Bobby Hurley? They have a talented bunch and they fucking, underachieve every single year with that so-called talented bunch. That was not a good performance against Tarleton State. The Lumberjacks have not been one of the better Big Sky teams the last few years, and that's putting it mildly. But I think Northern Arizona, down the stretch last year, Connor Mack, I remember we did shows. We talked about Northern Arizona was starting to cover some point spreads second half of last year, starting to show at least a little bit of improvement. I thought in their first game they looked all right. They've got they actually, for a team like Northern Arizona, they actually improved themselves pretty decently via the transfer portal. And you don't expect, programs like Northern Arizona to be able to take advantage of that. But I think they did. I'm not trusting Arizona State here, laying 16 and a half, not after they played so poorly offensively in that first game against Tarleton State. I don't care that the number's moving up. Give me Northern Arizona. Give me the Lumberjacks there, plus 16 and a half. So, Connor, did you have any thoughts on those two?
No, on the first one. You know what? Northern Arizona might be able to do it. I don't know what to make with her in this Arizona State team. Seems like he just doesn't have a good grip there, and I don't know how much longer he will last. You talk about against Tarleton State. Northern Arizona's always been so bad defensively. I know they played better towards the end of the year. If this was 21 or 22, I'd feel a lot better with Northern Arizona. But I'd lean him still at 16 a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I like Loyola Marymount a little bit against Cal Riverside, 6-point home favorites there in that game. I think that Loyola Marymount team should be pretty solid this year. Would like them laying the points. And a couple others that I bet, again, these unfortunately have moved. I like Radford a little bit, plus 18 and a half against Notre Dame. I think that's a solid squad. And Notre Dame's got enough questions coming into the year where I think covering 18 and a half could be a little dubious for them. I'm laying 10 and a half with Quinnipiac against Stonehill. Stonehill's a new team to Division I college basketball. And by all indications, if you watch that first game against UConn, it's going to be a tough struggle for them to adapt to this new Division I situation for them. Quinnipiac coming off a very impressive outright win as 9.5-point underdogs against Rhode Island, 67-62. This Quinnipiac team, Bobcats out of the Metro Atlantic, that's a conference I follow very closely. I think they could win this one by double figures. Now, I don't know the strength of this home court for Stone. I can't imagine it's that strong of a home court. It's probably one of these tiny little rinky-dink gyms that a lot of these schools play in. But no, my focus with all of these teams that are just entering the Division I's ranks this year is fade them at every reasonable opportunity early on until they get some traction. And that's what I'm doing with Stonehill tonight. So I laid 10 with Quinnipiac there in that game. And the only really other game I bet in the added board was, unfortunately, that everybody and his brother has bet this total up, and it's Nicholls State, Wyoming. over the total. I mean, Nicholls State got in a huge, just up and down affair with Arizona, who also play very fast, of course. And it was just an ultimate shootout. There was a shit ton of points in that Nicholls State Arizona game. I think you're going to see more of the same here. A lot of points. Wyoming shoots a lot of threes. Jeff Linder, one of my favorite coaches, has done a nice job. And keep in mind, Graham Ike may not play here for Wyoming. He's been one of their better players the last couple of years. And without him, I think you play more of a small ball lineup. You play a little bit more pace and worse defensively without him. So that helps the over as well. So I like that over with Nicholls State and Wyoming. It's gone up from 149 to 154.5, but I like it. I think it goes over the total. Matty Ice, I don't argue. Wyoming's not a team I'm betting against. It's just the Ike injury is probably going to keep me off laying that many points with Wyoming here. But I'm certainly not going against Wyoming. I like that team. I like that coach. I'm just going to look toward the over with that one. But I wish you luck with Wyoming, because that is a team I often like to back. I just pump the brakes here tonight with Ike potentially missing this game. So there we go. All right. Any thoughts there, Connor Mack, on those two?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to play without him. I think he's going to be out for weeks.
Yeah.
Right? Graham Ike. So, but in this game, I mean, Arizona scored 117. Yeah. Right? I mean, they won 117-75. Yeah. You got to think Wyoming could get 85, their team total. I'm with Matty Ice. I would lay it with Wyoming. They still have Maldonado. They still have Thompson. I think they'll be able to score. If Arizona got that, I got to think Wyoming could get 90. I mean, that team just played zero defense the other day. So I don't mind anything, their team total or laying it with Wyoming. Or full game could get over, like you mentioned.
Yeah, no question about that. All right, let's get
to Quinnipiac, I think they could beat Stone. I just don't know anything about, brand new, like you mentioned. Yeah. So I just got to wait and see there.
All right, awesome stuff. All right, we will Q&A time. We'll go through some comments in the YouTube chat. We'll start with Indiana Creekwalker. And we're not splitting the atom figuring out that Indiana Creekwalker is asking about a game involving Indiana. Genius. Indiana and Bethune-Cookman. We've got Indiana laying a big number here, 31.5, 32-point home favorite, 140 being the total in this game. I certainly think Indiana could be pretty damn good this year, because I think defensively, I liked what I saw first game of the season from them in their opening game. And that was always a bit of an issue with them at times last year. But now Mike Woodson in his second year is starting to establish a culture now with the Hoosiers. And, I think they're going to be even better than last year. They're not exactly a team I'm rushing to bet against. Do I want to lay 32? I don't know about that. Bethune-Cookman can sometimes, sneak up and compete with some of these big power conference teams. They've done so at times in the past. They might here, but at the same time, I'm very high on Indiana, and I'm not rushing to bet against them. At the same time, I don't know if I want to lay this many points, 32. I'd lean Indiana, honestly. Like, if you said free bet in, I'd lay the points before I take Bethune-Cookman, but I'm going to pass on it. Any thoughts on that one, C-Mac?
Same with me. I think the score could be similar. Would they lose their first game 89, like 58? Bethune-Cookman did. It's a ton of points for an Indiana team. It should be right there with these high numbers. So I'd be on Indiana or nothing there.
Yeah, and you might want to do the old Ian Cameron special, right? First half full game split, or is it in baseball where you do the first 5 inning full game split? It's always maybe a little bit worth your while.
Sometimes
to do that.
They can get you, because sometimes these teams sleepwalk through a half. Sometimes it's the first, and then they could get a second, or sometimes they come out hot and then give up junk buckets late and don't cover.
That's right. That's a great point. I find it could go both ways. It could be a sleepy start, and then they wake up and they roll the team in the second half, and vice versa. They're ready to go. They throttle the team. They're up 24 at halftime, and then all of a sudden they give some of it back, kind of fall asleep with the big lead. So something to keep in mind. All right, let's go to Owen LaPlante now, asking about Lehigh and Virginia Tech. Bet on versus bet on. I cashed a ticket with Lehigh against Syracuse the other night. I kind of like them in these underdog roles against these Power 5, Power Conference teams, I should say. I kind of want to lean Lehigh, but I like Virginia Tech. I think they could be really good. I think the ACC is wide open, and I think Virginia Tech's one of the teams in the mix in that ACC this year. There are a bunch of teams. Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, Never don't sleep on Florida State. I mean, there's a bunch of teams there in that conference that could win it this year, and Virginia Tech is certainly one of them, no question. Mike Young, one of my favorite coaches, as you know. They've got great shooting, 3-point shooting, inside outside balance, very good defensive team as well for the most part. They got a decent bench. See, part of the reason I was on Lehigh, Conor, the other night is because I'm not the biggest Syracuse fan. I really like Virginia Tech. And so I'm tempted to take the points again with Lehigh. I'd probably lean that way, but I like Virginia Tech a lot this year. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, I like this Virginia Tech team. They kind of just got tired maybe last year, they're in conference play, kind of just lost it. They came out really well. Big number here, better team. Lehigh's sneaky though. I just was, like you mentioned, down on Syracuse with all the flip they've had in that roster, and it's going to take time for maybe them to get going. So that one's tough. That's just one I'm off.
Right. How about Santa Clara and Georgia Southern? G. Martinez, our good friend in the chat, asking about that game. I think someone else did as well. But, Santa Clara, it's funny because Santa Clara, they lost a lot of key personnel from last year. Make no mistake about it. And I thought there may be some growing pains coming into the new season, but, solid first game of the season against Eastern Washington. They get the 84-72 win. What I like to see in that game was they've got Brandon Podziemski was terrific, 30 points in that game. He's going to be, I think, a terrific player for them. And they played, I thought, some pretty stellar defense, especially against the 3-point line. I mean, Eastern Washington can flat out shoot from long distance. And the one thing about Georgia Southern is in their first game is the shooting was not there. And that's a concern a little bit for me going into this game. They ended up losing 63-48 against San Jose State the other night. Not pretty at all from an offensive standpoint for Georgia Southern in that game. There's also a huge advantage in terms of rebounding as well. If you actually look at it, Santa Clara, a very good rebounding team. Last year, expected to be good on the glass this year, and that's a weakness for Georgia Southern. So if you're going to give Santa Clara second, third chances and second chance points, third chance points with the rebounding battle in their favor, could this get away from Georgia Southern again? It's very possible. So yeah, I would lean a little bit to Santa Clara. And Herb Sendek's pretty solid coach. I mean, since he's been here at Santa Clara, this program has moved on up the trajectory, the pecking order in the West Coast Conference a little bit. I'd lean Santa Clara. Didn't bet the game, but I lean to the favorite. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Santa Clara here. They're very close. I'd lay it or nothing. They've been very good here at home. Man, this team, Georgia Southern, couldn't score nothing for San Jose. It was like 65-48. They had 48 points. They might get more here. Santa Clara not crazy defensively, but I think Santa Clara 70s here, 80s, and I'd lay it.
Yeah, I definitely lean home favorite here as well. People mentioning Creighton, by the way, as well. They're taking on North Dakota tonight. Creighton 29-30.5 point favorites in this game. Total sitting at around 140.5. It always appeals to me when I see a Creighton game, especially at home, totaled as low as 140. But at the same point in time, this could be a really good Creighton defensive team. It was I think one of the better, defensive Creighton teams last year under McDermott as well. And don't sleep on that defense here. And that could make things difficult for North Dakota. This isn't a gifted offensive team by any stretch of the imagination. Creighton certainly has the potential to roll in this game because if their defense is locked in, North Dakota is not a terrific offensive team by any stretch of the imagination. I know if you look at Ken Pom, Bart Torvik, make sure, guys, you make these two sites a part of your arsenal. Handicapping college basketball every day. Ken Pom, especially Bart Torvik, because it's actually free. Bart Torvik. He's not. There's no subscription there at that site. Look at the stats, look at the numbers, and you could often find big matchup advantages based on the numbers. But this is a sketchy offensive team, and look, it's a defensive team too. That when they're facing better offensive teams like a Creighton, they're going to struggle. So this could get away from North Dakota. I certainly would look Creighton or nothing, but 30 points is a lot. That's the only concern here for me in this game. But no, I mean, Creighton, when you look at it, they're going to be very good in terms of offense once again this season. Good inside-outside balance, no question about that. I like that Ryan Kalkbrenner as well. Look out for him this year, certainly for this Creighton team.
Yeah.
Arthur Kaluma, Baylor Shearman. Just, they got multiple weapons. I think it'll be too much for North Dakota. The team total that Dabby Cab mentions in the chat here, over 83.5. I think you might be better off isolating the Creighton team total as opposed to playing it over the 140, because you just don't know what you're going to get from North Dakota. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, Creighton wins here. Just, this open's already moved, 3.5 points to 30.5. It's just, do you want to lay it against this shitty North Dakota team? I don't. That's it.
There you go. Yeah, it's just a lot. It's just a lot here, but that's why and again, team total. They could still hit their team total, not cover the point spread. So that's the advantage of maybe going with the over 83.5 with the Creighton team total in this game. All right, I'm just checking to see if we've got any last questions. If not, we're going to put a wrap and a bow on this show and get to best bets. I think, let me just see here. Yeah, we mentioned the Hilltoppers. We mentioned the Virginia, which game? Yeah, the Lehigh, West Virginia Tech. Yeah, we mentioned that. Looks like we got everything in the chat in terms of.
Yeah, none yet. I'm on Colgate, so.
Yep, there we go. And yeah, we did talk about Colgate. Connor Mack liking Colgate here, -6 against Brown in that game. All right, great show. And this is just a preamble or a warm-up, an appetizer, if you will, for tomorrow, because tomorrow is a much bigger slate. It's almost like a full Saturday type of slate tomorrow on the college basketball board. So we will definitely pick apart a ton of games, a lot more opportunities, obviously, on the betting board. Looking forward to that. Oh, yeah, Riverside, Loyola, Billy Briz. I didn't bet it, but I lean Loyola. Yeah, I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Loyola Marymount -6 over Riverside. Riverside can get really, really nails on a chalkboard sometimes in terms of their offense. That really concerns me with them at times. No question about that. In fact, they're projected to be 215th in the country in offense this year, so that's a concern.
They could be worse. I want to see it a little more. I lean to the under. We know Loyola can score, so that was just a lean for me. I didn't go full, but I lean under 139.
Yep. And Omaha, I do like Nebraska-Omaha plus the points against Nebraska. That is on my card. That is definitely one of my bets. So there you go. All right, let's wrap it up. By the way, before we wrap it up, I forgot. When I host anyway, we got to hear from our sponsors. Manscaped, Southtown 101. All right, Southtown 101. When you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke, Southtown 101, and manscaped.com. 20% off your purchase of any product, including Lawnmower 4.0, 20% off with promo code PubSports. All right, it is time for Best Bets to wrap up another edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show here on Pub Sports Radio. I'm going to give you two best bets in just a second. But first, Connor Mack, what do you like for Best Bet?
I'm going to give you all of mine here, what I'm on. We've talked about Colgate. I like the team total 77.5, but there's 5.5 bookmaker circa. Colgate -5.5. Vermont +8.5. Gardner-Webb, Stephen F. Austin under 139. And I added this one. I think they can hang around. Western Carolina +20.5. That is it.
There you go. There we go. A slew of best bets here for Connor Mack.
We got a shitload of games, so. Yeah,
yes, we sure do. Might as well. I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you one side and one total. I'm going to go Northern Arizona +16.5 against Arizona State. I'm not buying Bobby Hurley and the Sun Devils as this big of a favorite. They had clear issues with offensive synchronicity in the first game. Northern Arizona certainly showing signs of improvement. I just think too many points here. Northern Arizona plus 16.5. And I'm going to go with that over with Nicholls State and Wyoming. Still a playable over at 154 and a half is the best number out there right now. I think we get over that total. And Nicholls State and Arizona was a track meet. Wyoming should be able to score at will. That's not a bad Nicholls State offensive team. And Wyoming defense does suffer with Ike out. So I like that game to fly over the total. So there's two best bets. Northern Arizona plus 16.5. Nicholls State, Wyoming over 154. There we go for my best bets here for this edition of the Net Profit College Basketball Show.
Ian, real quick. We got over almost 130 in here, over 120. We only got 40 likes. Do me one goddamn thing. Hit the goddamn like button on the way out.
That's right. Don't be motherfucking respectful, as our guy Dutch says. Come on now. Yeah, hit that like button. We appreciate it very much for this show. We're going to be on now weekdays. That wasn't initially the plan, but we're going to be on every day now, Monday to Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern. I won't be on every day, Monday to Friday, until December. I'm only going to do 2-3 days a week till then, but we're going to have Dabby Cab rolling in on this show whenever he can do it. We're going to try to get our guy Matty Ice on as well during the season. So it'll be a lot of fun, and we'll have you covered 5 days a week, Monday to Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time, 2 p.m. Pacific. And we'll probably expand the show to Saturday morning after the college football season ends in January. So look forward to being on this show a lot, and this show is going to have you covered throughout the college basketball season. Net Profit right here on Pub Sports Radio. For Conor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Thursday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. And Conor and I will catch you again tomorrow, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern for another edition of College Basketball Net Profit on Pub Sports Radio.